Morning. I'm up and running and decided I was just gonna make a short one, short little video. I have multiple things going on. I've been doing a lot of genealogy, and I think that sometimes I forget about that in regards to there's a certain amount I've done on most all of my surnames, but um, if I pick one up that I've worked on fairly recently, I'm further ahead than I have been on some. And so I've been really excited with the Chase family because I was able to take it from kind of from Michigan and then into New York and then into Massachusetts. And then last night I actually saw some New Hampshire. So, and it's really changing the flow of things. These are not the people that went out and went to the wild woolly west to live out an adventure. These were the people who were planners of how the United States became the United States and the different people, that were like in the Revolutionary War, and so it's really interesting. But there's a couple things right off the bat that I would like to cover. I know some of you know what a troll is on in regards to computers, and I thought I was prepared for it, and so it's usually some way somebody communicates um, a dissatisfaction with what they're seeing, and some people probably just are grumps. They're just grumpy, and they want to say or do certain things to kind of you know play games, I think. So ever since I started doing videos, I've had a little bit of some of that going on and have been more or less just ignoring it. Uh, but I want to read you something. So when you're working in ancestry.com, there's a place where you can message somebody. So I have messaged people, and I've been told also by some genealogists that if they send out 20 questions or 20 contact uh, email type to people, they may get something like one. And part of that is I think that people do genealogy and then they go on a vacation or they go back to work or they just, after a while they get tired of doing genealogy and so they just stop. And um, so sometimes you don't really make those connections that you would think you might. However, I wanted to read one that I got a communication. I think the lady was actually out of the country, even. I think she maybe was in England. And so I'll read it to you and see what you think. Dear Miss McDonald, first, I'd like to thank you for finding and sharing the articles for Donna Joy Chase and Carlton Harry Mott, my parents. And so, I am grateful to have run into these articles to add to my tree. These hints led me to trying to discover what our connection may be, her and I. Although it pains me, this is where, and I didn't even finish reading it all because to me it was sound like it was going down a bad road. Although it pains me to inform you, especially after seeing the extensive research and time you have put forth connecting my family to yours. It leads me to having to inform you, here comes, inform you that some of your research has unfortunately led you down the wrong path. And quite often, I mean, that's it has a tendency. She's being very lighthearted about it in a way, but basically a lot of times people say you're wrong, you're on the, that's not your ancestor, and then you kind of have to backpedal and for me, like I have to like I put a lot of weight on the people that are alive that are willing to communicate because there's data there. But at the same time, I don't want to take a beating. I don't want to lose a lot of sleep over it. To start, she says, you have mistakenly connected Louis Chase and Elizabeth Woodcliff as Joy's parents. My mother was adopted by Arnold Abram Chase and Donna Cecilia Peggy Van Orsdale and her birth parents, as determined by DNA. were either Michael Harrington Hastings or William John Hastings and Grace Labarre. Records show Michael has having never married, and William is having only one child without issue. Both of these lines appear to have passed with the three of them without leaving any other DNA as yet to prove which brother was Joy's birth father. So this is the kind of thing sometimes, and sometimes it works out. Sometimes there's really, I really connect with some of the people, and I always try to respond to people, in a nice way back. Um, but I kind of stopped, and I stopped working on the chases for a while, and then jumped into this message that I had received from her. Complicating matters a little further, DNA testing has proven that my family's birth father was not Charles Valentine Mott, although I don't believe anyone, save my grandmother, was aware of the hiccup, but was in fact Paul Augusto Wanson. Now, see, these names are not clicking with me a little bit. There's the Chase mention. In the very beginning, the Lewis Chase would have been one of my grandmother's brothers, and so I thought there was going to be a real, you know. But basically, she's saying you're wrong and I'm right, and that kind of ticks off people or distracts you. Although I don't believe anyone saved my grandmother. And that was kind of funny because genealogists, and anytime you're around a group of genealogists, eventually someone will say, grandmas lie, but DNA doesn't. And so, I'm not going to, and I haven't responded to her yet. Let's see, what else did she say? Uh, anyway, she basically told me I was on the wrong path, and that so basically the way I looked at it by getting this from her, she was much more pleasant than some of them I've seen, and especially people that I know that also have webs uh, doing videos, or has a business online. They get this, because there's always somebody that, and you can block them on, you can the lawyer I watch, he has a really good attitude about it in regards to, maybe these people are really sad and lonely or grumpy again or whatever. And so he doesn't really monitor him. He doesn't get rid of him. He just continues on as if nothing was going on. But I think after a while, it's going to wear thin. But so this hasn't happened a lot to me. And so, but it made me stop because, at that point that she's talking about, Louis Chase, is my grandmother's brother, younger brother. So I went back to that point in my research and, you know, started from the beginning, and I don't, I have to say, I did not come up with any anything different than I actually had. And I felt like the resource documentation that I have to support my research is available. So I probably will take the time to send her a message back and explain to her, what I have, and I can't I can't change that. So that was one of the things that kind of got me, it just distracts me and gets me off of where I am. And I think that in some ways, when you're doing genealogy, is very relaxing. There isn't a lot of that available. Most of the people are dead, and they're not going to come back and fight you, and say, oh, you just made a mistake. But and this lady, she really made a big, very polite way of saying you're wrong, and you know you're going to have to do your work over again. So that was one of them. And, and then the other one, excuse me, was a lady that my brother Dan and I had. Um, she showed on our tree that she was a first cousin to me and a second cousin to him. And of course, we both, like, we don't have first cousins. We have, both our parents were um, only children. So now my mom and my dad, they had aunts and uncles and kids and stuff like that, but we didn't have anybody to really. So it was curious, and we were curious about who this lady was. So, and this was quite a while ago, but it just came up again a couple days ago. So this lady's the story of her situation was that she didn't know who her father was, and so we helped her, and she was on in Ancestry, but she really hadn't done very much in researching for her on her own. But we did make it possible for it was a 1940 census report. We were able to solve that mystery for her, and we felt okay about it. We didn't think that there was I didn't know if I'd ever hear from her again. I know that there has been some of this information passed on to some of um the people who are still alive now. All of my grandmother's brothers and sisters have passed, but they had kids and the kids had kids, and so there are other people working on those. And this particular family, I began to notice there was a lot of things going on that I don't see all the time. And then I remembered that this was, my grandmother's, Ella. um, she she was the only one that left out in Jackson, Michigan, and their dad was a long ways away working in the wood camps and never really came to visit the family. It didn't appear, and her mom worked as a maid, so it wasn't, it was kind of a so I don't know, so I'm compelled to just go ahead and do this thing on her other brother. So anyway, so out of the blue, she calls me a couple days ago. And she said her story that she told me was that she had recently, she was 79 years old. And we didn't have to really review much of the connection because, but she's had no contact with any of those brothers and sisters on my side. Um, and so she's just kind of let that go. But what happened to her a few days ago, weeks ago, was that she had a pain in her chest, a really bad pain, and so she went to the ER, and they ended up airlifting her to the University Hospital in Flint, I think it was, a different major city. They took her by helicopter, and they ended up having to perform open heart surgery. And she told me what it was called, and she was telling me all this information pretty fast, and I didn't really catch it, although it was something to do with a defect, and it was a genetic defect in her heart that could be passed on. And it was in both the upper and lower parts of the heart, she said. Now, so what she was asking me is when she got out of the hospital, and the doctor and the people who worked with her wanted to know if there was anybody in the family that should be notified and be aware and go at least get a ultrasound and have their heart checked out to make sure because she hadn't been sick. She wasn't a sickly person. She wasn't feeling any pain until a couple weeks ago. And so immediately I went ahead and I started doing, what I could do. I mean, what she was looking for was if there was anybody that I thought that she could contact. And I am still in contact with those children of the all of the brothers and sisters of my grandmothers that had died. So immediately, and I just know, I think I've always been like, I'm always volunteering, I'm always helping, I'm always like, what can I do for you? And so I kind of stopped my researching and went deeper into her situation. Now, when she told me her story this time, though, it was a little bit different than last time, and I thought that was, kind of interesting. And she had two sons. Um, Her mother actually had two sons, and she was put in an orphanage. It's a really convoluted type scenario that you don't see a lot, but you'd be surprised. Even that other lady that I just read about, there was an adoption, and when that adoptions, they were closed for so long, and now that they've been open to people that are looking for their biological now. So she was not looking for anything about these people at all. She was only looking at the possibility that there might be a genetic heart situation with some of these people. So naturally, I start doing that genealogy for this lady, basically. And I have yet, and after a conversation I had today with my son, I think I'm leaning towards, I'm going to pretend it's a hot potato and I'm going to pass it on to, especially one of the uh, people that was related to one of my grandmother's side of the family is married to a doctor, so I thought I would just send her the information and then she could do and pass it on and what they're going to do with this DNA. And immediately, I'm like pulling out my DNA book. I took a extensive course in DNA, but DNA is, I mean, there's so many possibilities the way it can go. And I've been paying attention a lot to the criminal use of DNA, and it wasn't that many years ago when it wasn't available, but for some reason the police were still keeping things in big boxes someplace, and so they're even able to get DNA that way. And I know there's a big murder case right now that a sheath on a knife on the button there was DNA, and then they went halfway across the United States and got a piece of pizza maybe, or they got something out of the garbage, and then they took it back and tested it. And so it was, it's going to be interesting. The trial hasn't started yet, and how they'll deal with the DNA. I know that there is a lady by the name of Cece Moore who is devoted completely to the crime aspect of DNA genealogy. And so that's the course I took and the book that I got that was, very, 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 very technical. But, that's just me too. I want to learn whatever I can learn. But at this point, I don't want to stop and get involved in somebody else's business that I don't need to be involved in. And so that was the other thing that kind of pulled me away from what I was doing. And um, so I got back to it. And so I went, I think the last video I had completed was the one that was yeah, it was it was in upstate New York. And I was looking forward to going to Herkimer, and I think I've mentioned that a couple times in the videos where the Herkimer diamonds are mined out of. And because some of our people lived in Herkimer, and Schenectady was always another one, but this all of a sudden showed up as um, Albany, and the family that we would connect with. Definitely it was a chase, definitely it was a DNA match. Um, the first man that I started working on, he actually had, it ends up, bottom line, I think he has 10 or 11, which was like my grandpa had. He was number 11 of a family. But when you're trying to, I still kind of wanted to do my video and, and continue on the path that I've been going. And I was getting more and more excited because it was a whole different scenario. It was people who actually belonged to and I think I might have mentioned this last time a little bit, but I did look up more of it. The daughters of the American Revolution, and there's actually the son of the revolution. And and I looked that up and I was interested, but these people definitely were more of the founding fathers of the Revolutionary War, and had that commitment to. They mentioned the commitment for like um, the sons of the. Sometimes you get like your tongue twisted around. But anyway, so the Sons of the Revolutionary War, and their group, and it's a large, large group, and they have, you can go any place in the United States and find other places where they meet, and it's not the secret thing of the Masonics, but they continue on with education, which ends up being educating people about other things than just giving scholarships. But I think that they would probably be giving scholarships to, people who are really involved in in the founding fathers, and democracy was listed as a big thing that you needed to have. And there was actually an application in, but the men that I was working with all these kids, and it seemed like there's much more than brothers than sisters in this particular family. Um, they were highly educated, most all of the kids, and some of the parents had were lawyers and had degrees. A lot of the kids went to Harvard, and they have carried on, and they were much more into um, big business of the time, and so it's been very interesting to sort of open that up. And the newspaper articles on these people are really fun to read because they get engaged, they get engagement party, and they tell you about what color the mints were and the lace, and they go through this whole thing, and it's very it's upper level echelon that um, these people were part of. Now I'm not saying that that I have found that there's not, like, they may not all be in that same vein. I try to be very, not to judge. It's like when I was doing Jerry back in Montana, and some of the newspaper articles about that family, and some of the willing and dealings that went along with the Irish. I always have a lot of effort that I put into not being judgmental. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying these people are saints or anything like that. But they are very much in that kind of different realm to be going to these meetings and being a part of history. And so then from um, Albany, New York, actually the next generation went into uh, eventually they went to New Hampshire, but they were in Massachusetts first. And so if you think about a map of um, New York, and there's upper state, which was where the silverware was made, and was the kind of the area of reform of people. And then these people were in the eastern part of New York. And so then the next generation that I found, and every single one I pick up has at least 10 kids in it. And I like to I go through and I do what I can on all of the children to see, because then I get a better idea and a flow of the history of their family, but also the history of the area and what was, but so their involvement went down into New Hampshire then from Massachusetts. So I haven't looked anybody up in New Hampshire at all. I've been just sticking in Massachusetts right now. And but it's interesting. It's just don't know what you're going to find. And I but I know my son DJ and I was talking about, you know, like genealogy, especially, it's pretty black and white. It's like, there isn't a bunch of gray zone normally when you're doing genealogy. It's very based on facts, census reports, marriage certificates, death notices, hospital, all the different things that you have tangible in your you can copy and have and put in your research. But you don't get that necessarily, whether it doesn't come up and say, oh, this is a good person, oh, this is a bad person. And so you just kind of hold back, and you just kind of gather and research and gather. And I've realized too, especially this last weekend, because I did get really off track um, in working with those two other situations, that I think that my commitment, my interest is not to go as much with the people that are doing some of the things that they're doing right now. That, I mean, some of them are definitely spot on, but at the same time, you don't really know who these people are. Um, so I think that's about it for today. It's actually a little bit longer than I usually go, but at the same time, I wanted to give you an update and say hi. And my one girlfriend says, "You gotta laugh, keep laughing," and she just, she thinks I have a contagious laugh, um, and I know that I've been watching a lot of reruns of Johnny. Uh, oh, like the old time Johnny Carson and the old actresses and actors and just laugh. I just sit there and I laugh and I laugh and laugh. And I wonder if my neighbor upstairs hears me and thinks I'm having a party, but it's just me here by myself. And I really like humor. And so I don't really want to get sidetracked into any political connections or any, I'm not counting on any end result to um, what I'm doing with genealogy and doing these videos, especially. But anyway, I hope you have a very good afternoon. And my grandbabies are coming over, and they're not babies anymore, and especially Matthias, who's 11 now, and he's almost as tall as me. His feet are the same size, and Ella is 6, and so they'll be coming shortly um, give me a little visit. And so, yep, I really appreciate all of you who are watching my videos and the input and the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. That's one of the algorithms that I really need to be able to, boost it up because I have a lot of people looking at all my videos and I have them looking at it and reading it. You can see how long they read the whole thing and but the subscribers are still like I don't know why I don't know. And my lawyer guy that I watch, he's a young lawyer, and he's savvy enough in he's training all of his lawyers to get used to it, to get used to this is the way it is that um, social media plays a part right now a lot in the social media going into a court scenario or um, and it's exciting to me because like what he'll do is he actually is usually live and he'll pull up a document and say this is what it says and this is what it means. And it was interesting because the other day one of them that he was working on and and he was really um, struggling a little bit because that particular state had not upgraded their laws, and the laws were back from like 1600 or 1700, and so he's very much kind of leading the pack as far as helping lawyers figure out ways to be able to get around and understand the change because it's changing. It's not going to go back. You know, we're not going that direction. I have a feeling. So anyway, have a great afternoon, and I'm going to do some genealogy day, and all the people are going to be dead. So sayonara. Bye.